You got it? All right, guys. Excuse me. I want to welcome everybody tonight. My name is Gregg Flatt, and I am one of the substitute teaching leaders for the, it's not Elkhart, it's Granger, BSF, men's BSF class. We are on lesson 25, reading and responding to the law. Okay, guys, show of hands. How many of you have ever served in the military? All right. So some of you have. Did any of you ever volunteer for anything? Or did you get volunteered? Because the military is big about volunteering you. If you did, first of all, thank you for your service. But when you volunteer, it can almost be a thankless job. It means sacrificing your time, your energies, and sometimes even your resources. It's hard to get people to help, unless of course you are looking for advice. Then it just kind of freely starts to flow. When the criticism starts, why did you do it this way? Why didn't you do it that way? And then it's always if I had done this, I would have done it this way. But for me, I remember one time when I first started in business, and I was in this meeting, and we were getting ready to add on to our building. We were going to put up a finishing department for our hardwood molding line. The addition was only about 20,000 square feet, so it wasn't huge, but there was about an acre of woods that was going to have to be cleared. And it had to be done in 3 weeks because that's when the construction crew was going to come in. So I had a friend back in the day that had a tree service, and occasionally I would help him cut trees. So obviously I knew a little bit about cutting trees. So what did I do in the middle of this meeting? I volunteered to remove the trees, save the company a little bit of money. But not only did I volunteer to remove the trees, I told my bosses that I had two of them at the time, that they would get an ample supply of split firewood also stacked at their house. Yes, yeah. I went in full bore. So, well, long story short, the second day into this tree removal process, the guy that actually was doing the work, I was helping after work and on the weekends. He's out there, he trips over a log, breaks his leg. So what, which left me the sole person responsible for this whole undertaking. And then that's when it got pretty real. The pressure of having to do my day job and then work on cutting, splitting, stacking firewood, clearing trees until it was too dark to see was just a little daunting, a little overwhelming. Every day I had to go in and listen to my bosses all day long talking, asking me, when do you think you're going to be done removing the trees? We're down to 2.5 weeks before the crew gets here to start this construction. What do you do? My boss had two sons that also worked for us. They could have pitched in, but they were having way too much fun ribbing me about volunteering. I had the pressure of the guys asking me in the shop, why are you the only one doing this? I think you get the picture. Volunteering is not all, it's not for the faint of heart. And the truth is, I had a lot at stake here. I could have just quit, but that might have also cost me my job. I just had to stay the course, grin, and bear it. And that is where we find Nehemiah tonight. He understood the importance of getting the wall built around Jerusalem. Without the wall, Jerusalem, it was never going to be rebuilt. The wall was essential to the rebuilding of Jerusalem. And it was also important to the reestablishing worship to the one true God of the Jewish people. The stakes were also high for Nehemiah. Jerusalem and the wall had laid in ruins for 140 years. Last week, we saw Nehemiah face opposition, criticism, but he remained steady, standing in God's word and praying all along the way as they rebuilt the wall. And this week, with the wall built, Nehemiah leads the people into a time of glorious worship and celebration, despite ongoing challenges, kind of like the way our lives are today. Challenges all the time. Tonight, our lesson will be in 3 parts. The first being, it is finished. That'll cover chapters 6:15 through 7:4. 2 will be a new census, chapters 7, 5 through 73. And then lastly, obedience to the law, which will be chapter 8. And my hope is that by the end of the night, we will know that trusting God's word and sincere worship of him unites his people. All right, so let's get started. It is finished. So the wall was finished just like that. No, I don't think so. We learned last week of all the opposition, the criticism, the lies, and the taunts that were thrown at them during the rebuilding. And now, in just 52 days, on the 25th of, I'm going to mess this up, Elu, the wall is finished. It's complete. But how? It lay in ruins for 140 years, and now in just 52 days, it's standing upright, providing protection. How does that happen? I'll tell you how it happens. It happens by the power of God. That is how it happens. And the other thing, all the surrounding nations, they knew that is how it happened also. So I'm trying to put myself in the position of the surrounding nations. I see a city without walls that lie in ruins for 4 or 5 generations, and like overnight, the walls are rebuilt. The surrounding nations, they know and sense that there is something other than human activity going on here, and they become greatly afraid. In fact, God's word says they lost their self-confidence. In their hearts, they know that this work was accomplished with the help of the Jewish God, the one true God. When was the last time you knew in your heart that God was responsible for something that happened in your life, something that changed everything? That's who God is. When you call upon the power of God, he changes things. God has the power to raise walls in 52 days that have laid in ruins for 140 years. What does God need to raise up in your life? Will you allow God to work in the ruins of your life, to raise up the good things he has in store for you? Verses 17 to 19. The wall's up, but the opposition continues. We get a glimpse into the seriously deep network of those that tried to prevent the completion of the project. There were letters going back and forth between Tobiah and the Jewish nobles in Judah against Nehemiah. Tobiah, who was an Amorite, felt confident about his opposition to Nehemiah because he was married to the daughter of one of the noble Jews that had returned earlier, perhaps with Ezra. Tobiah's son was also married, and he also married into the Jewish noble family. So this must have given Tobiah the thought that he had, something to say that might influence the building of the wall, that he might be able to stop the rebuilding of Jerusalem. But Tobiah's letters had no effect on Nehemiah, and he remained unfazed. The building continued. So I was sitting there and I kind of imagine why this is going on, these letters and all this, that Nehemiah is kind of like swatting gnats. Didn't bother him, didn't faze him. He knew he was being oppressed, but he had somebody else on his side. Verse 6:14 says that Nehemiah prayed that God would remember Tobiah and Sanballat, that God would protect him and the work that they were doing. Nehemiah prayed and believed, and by faith he endured. What an example that is to us today. And God's word says that in this life, there will be trouble. So what opposition, what intimidation are you facing from those with perceived authority, perceived power? What an encouragement to us. Nehemiah's example, holding steady in the face of adversity. How will you allow your faith in God to grow in light of Nehemiah's example? Where do you need to trust God? So chapter 7, 1-4, finish up this section. As soon as the wall was rebuilt and the doors in place, Nehemiah appointed gatekeepers, musicians, and the Levites to guard the gates. These people were usually associated with the temple. But because of the lack of people, Nehemiah used all the people at his disposal. By using the gatekeepers, the musicians, singers, and Levites, this was Nehemiah's way of protecting the reestablishment of regular worship in Jerusalem. Nehemiah also instructed that the gates of Jerusalem be open when the sun was hot. So when the sun is hot, I'm kind of imagining that late morning, early afternoon. And more than likely, it was a security measure. Along with the gatekeepers, the new residents of Jerusalem were appointed as guards along the post and others near their homes. Everyone was called to do their part. This was not a time to let their guard down. There was still opposition to the rebuilding of Jerusalem. But Nehemiah was a prayer warrior, a godly leader that trusted God. And we see that in the wise and practical choices that he made. Godly leadership means trusting God and then prayerfully acting with discernment while leading others. We see this in the appointment of Hanani and Hananiah, both God-fearing men of integrity. Integrity and faithfulness are the backbone of godly leadership. The culture of any organization is reflective of its leadership. Nehemiah wanted the very best for Jerusalem. People beyond reproach. People whose integrity could not be questioned. How does that translate to you and I? How does being a witness for Jesus Christ impact the way you and I think? the way that we speak, the way that we act. Are we like Hananiah and Hananiah, men of integrity, men beyond reproach? So the wall was finished through prayer, worship, and God's strength and his desire for his children to live a life of grace and mercy. God called Nehemiah to step outside his comfort zone and go many miles from his home to do something that no one else was called to do: restore what once was. It's no different than what God called his son, Jesus Christ, to do. God called his son to go and live a life worthy of the Lamb and then die for you and I, so that we might have everlasting life and live eternally with him in paradise. Jesus did what the Father asked, and when it was over, Jesus said, "It is finished." And that brings us to our first principle. God's work will not be thwarted. It will prevail. God's work will not be thwarted. It will prevail. So what is God asking you to do? Is he calling you to some sort of service in your local church? Maybe you're being called to help a neighbor with a project that needs your expertise. Maybe a grandchild needs help with their schoolwork. Here's the truth, guys. God doesn't need us to get his work done, but he wants us to share in the blessing of helping others. Don't miss the blessing. Whether it's building the walls around a city or helping a neighbor out, God's work will ultimately prevail. All right, next section, a new census. Now with the wall completed, Nehemiah turned to face his next challenge: repopulation of Jerusalem. The people first rebuilt the temple, and now with the walls up, their next consideration is the city itself. After Babylon sacked the city in 586 BC, the people went into exile. The city lie in ruins. Those that did return from Babylon mostly settled outside the fallen city walls. Makes sense. No one wants to live in a burned out pile of rocks. So now God puts in Nehemiah's heart the need for a census. Consistent prayer guided his obedient response to the Lord. Nehemiah calls the tiny nation to assemble, and he registers the family of Israel. Nehemiah found help in the form of the first census that was taken almost 100 years earlier. That was the decree of Cyrus, and that made an accounting of all the Jews that originally returned to Babylon. Why is this important? Genealogies provide proof 6 to 69, 7, 6 to 69.